Chapter 35. There was a short amount of time and a short distance for the bison to cover still, and I had a key task to perform to keep everything going, to signal the start of the final stage of the escape. So I ran to the top of the hill that separated all that the bison would be leaving behind from the ship that would take them to their future, their liberation. It was my job to run to the top and make sure all was ready for the last steps of the journey. I flew up the hill, which was rocky and volcanic, and hurt my paws briefly and inconsequentially. And then I was there, at the top, and I could see it all. The long stretch of the beach where the goats and the bison were rumbling toward the hill and me, and on the other side of the peak, the ship. The ship. I had not seen the ship before this. I had seen ships, yes. I had often seen them from far away on the sea and had occasionally seen them pass closer to our shore, but had never seen one stopped like this, so close, right there. And it was right there, and it was enormous. It was as big as any building in the park and brighter, lit by a million lights of white and blue and yellow. It looked very beautiful to me and very strange and very man-made, and also like a constellation of low-hanging sister suns. I knew I would freeze from the beauty if I did not look away, so I looked away at the horizon where the sky meets the sea, and that's when I saw the first crack of orange, the first break in the black of night. The sun was coming. Now time was short, so short. I made my signal, which was the loudest howl I could howl, which was also my favorite thing to say. Ha ha hoo! I yelled it from the top of that black mini mountain. Ha ha hoo! I yelled it to the beach, and I yelled it to the ship, and I yelled it to the sky, especially to the sky, because it was the birds who needed most to hear my signal song. Ha ha hoo! Helene had explained that the ship held few humans, fewer than 10, and the attention of these humans had to be diverted so that when the mass of goat and bison descended the hill and rumbled up the ramp and into the boat, few or no humans would be there to see it. Ha ha hoo! I roared again, and from above I heard Yolanda say, "Got it! We're on it! We're going!" And as she swooped over me and toward the ship, it was not just her. No. She was joined by 5, 10, a billion other birds, not just pelicans and gulls, but also loons and herons and sandpipers, and even blue jays and hummingbirds and crows. It was a tremendous sight, all of these birds in their different colors and different ways of flying, all in a swarm headed toward the great ship with madness on their minds. They quickly swooped to the far side of the ship, the side opposite the ramp. The idea was to keep the ship's humans occupied on that side, fending off the bird onslaught for long enough that the bison could get down the hill and into the ship without any of those humans noticing. Oh, this was a big part of the plan. A risky and crazy and unavoidable part of the plan. And the part of the plan I thought most likely to fail. But I watched, and it did not fail. No, it did not fail. It was glorious. The birds swarmed on the far side of the ship, and first there were yells. I could hear the human yells even from so far away. And then there were plumes of water. Somehow the humans on the ship could direct plumes of water upward, like the fountain near the Cathedral of Flowers. And I saw these white sprays of water go up, and I watched as my bird friends simply rose up to miss them. It was so easy. Birds can move up, I wanted to tell the plume-wielding humans. You send the water up, the birds just go farther up. Oh, it was something. Oh, humans, bless them, they try. And it seemed that it was all of the humans on the ship who were trying. I am not a good counter, as you know, but it seemed that 10, 12, or more of the humans were all gathered on the far side of the ship, yelling and pluming and ducking when the occasional Yolanda or crow swung out of the sky to send them scurrying. It was working. I looked and looked with my extraordinary vision and saw no humans on the near side of the ship. It was time. I made a second signal, this one to bring the goats and bison up to the top of the hill for our last push. And when I made this signal, ha-ha-hoo! I did so with such joy. I was laughing at the end of the signal. So overcome with happiness was I, picturing the last thundering stage of the gambit because I knew it would work. Everything was working. Everything was beautiful. And now they had heard my signal song and were climbing the hill. And it was something to see. Everything I'd ever seen until then was dull and uninspired compared with the way those goats went up the hill with a bison between them. I should have known. Of course, the goats' work now would be bigger, crazier, better, and heightened. We were drawing closer to the ship where humans would be, and closer to the goat herd who might see, and thus more hiding of the bison needed to be done. And to that end, the goats ran and jumped and scurried and climbed on each other's backs in such a way that it looked like a big rolling ball of fur and ears and horns, lopsided and crazed. And they were rolling uphill. Even though I knew that Freya and Meredith and Samuel were among the goats, I could not see them. I knew they were there, but even I could not see them. The goats were that good. And Helene was especially good. I could see her leading it all, jumping and circling and commanding. "Higher," she said. "Loonier," she said. And occasionally she reminded the bison to stay low, to hide their horns, to keep themselves unseeable. And then they were there with me. It happened so fast. I was watching the mass of goats and bison at the base of the hill, and seconds later it seemed they were with me at the top. They were heaving. They were exhausted. They could not speak. They could not even look up. Freya was on her knees. Meredith and Samuel lay down on the volcanic peak, not a comfortable place to lie, I was sure. I had not expected the climb to take so much out of them, but then again, I had never seen them run more than a few feet at a time, so I could only smile and wait while allowing them to recover, my heart filled with an electric bliss, seeing them so high above the park and the sand and the sea. From where we were, we could see the windmill and the taller buildings of the park and the human cement corridors around it, and could see the sweep of sand and dunes and sea. We could see everything we'd ever seen, and 1,000 times more. "You made it," I said. I tried to say. "Don't cry," Freya said, her voice so weak. I was not yet crying, but my throat was hitching my speech, and between their heavy breathing from climbing up the hill and my sniffling and snorting, we all took a second to gather ourselves. And while we did so, the crack in the horizon opened up like a curtain raised to a spectacular array of color and light. Oh, Samuel said, rising. He looked at the sun and the sea. "It's beyond anything I could have imagined." And it was then that I realized that during all of their running and being hidden on the beach, they had not yet seen the ocean. "Oh," Meredith sighed, "just look at it. See the pinks and the lavenders and chartreuse and silver," Samuel said. "I see gold. Look at all the gold. The sea is gold." I don't think I'd ever heard him so happy. His eyes were fully open for the first time. "I'm so grateful you brought us here," Freya said to me and to Helene. "I never thought I'd see it." "Oh, you'll see plenty more of it," Helene said. "You'll be on the sea for weeks. You might see more of it than you want to. Honestly, every day and night until you get to the mainland." And then Freya turned to me. I will always remember her eyes at that moment. There was pity in them and apology and a bit of frustration. as if she were mad at me for making her say something that she thought so obvious. "We can't," she said. "Can't what?" I said. "We can't go on that ship," she said. "But it's right down there," I said. "We've already done the hard part. Everything's ready." I was frantic, for the sky was growing brighter, and with every passing moment, it would be more difficult to hide them as they descended the hill. "No," Freya said, "we're not going. We thought perhaps we could, but this journey, as short as it's been, has proven that we are not ready for more. We can't make it." "You can!" I wailed. "It's impossible," she said. These words, I couldn't speak. They were such madness, these words, of betrayal. After all of this toil, all this planning. I looked to Samuel, whose head was hung low, and I looked to Meredith, who smiled grimly at me. "We had our doubts all along," she said. "Honestly, we never thought any of this would work." Samuel looked up. "We didn't think we'd get this far." "But why let all of us go through all this trouble?" I asked. And now I saw that Helene and all the goats had heard our conversation, and they shared my irritation. They were leaning in, curious but with growing exasperation. "You needn't be angry," Freya said, "or sad, or even surprised. Look at us. We're not adventurers. We're lumbering old mammals. We were not meant to shoot across the sea in strange boats." "I'm sorry, kid," Samuel said. "Seeing this is enough," Freya said. She was still staring out at the phosphorescent sea, which had grown brighter and whiter, the waves topped with frosting. She turned to me then. "Thank you, my son." She turned to Helene and the goats. "You have all given us a precious thing. We are so grateful." With a flurry of wings, Yolanda was among us. "What's happening?" she asked. We're running out of tricks over there at the ship." "They're not going," I said. Yolanda looked at the bison, incredulous, shattered. And finally, Freya, who had disappointed me so much in all of this with her decision and her few words of explanation, raised her voice to speak to us all. "We have lived cloistered lives, limited lives, but you have freed our eyes and our minds. What you did today mattered. It did. It mattered a great deal. You gave us the sea. You gave us this unbounded sight, and we will not forget it." "But you have to go," I said. No, Freya said. "All along we wondered if we wanted to board a boat with both destination and fate unknown. We are not young, we are not fast, and even getting this far has taxed our every muscle and every bone. We've been in the park all our lives, and what remains of our lives is finite. We don't want to die in some unknown place so far from home. And die we would. We hope you will take pride in what you did today, and you will accept our gratitude." She swept her eyes across the mass of goats before her. "You have done a brave and kind thing for us today," she said, "and we will never be able to thank you properly." A whistle cut her speech short. It was the same one from before, a human whistle. It was the goat herd. He was standing on the ramp to the boat and looking up. He could no doubt see the goats amassed at the top of the hill, and no doubt wondered why they were there. He whistled again. "Goodbye," Helene said to Freya and Samuel and Meredith, and very quickly the bison said their goodbyes to all the goats who had run and jumped and bayed to keep them all hidden all this time. There was much confusion and some frustration, but there was also a sense of urgency, for the boat was leaving. "Go on," Helene said to her goat army, and they began to make their way down the hill toward the ramp and the goat herd. And as they passed me and Yolanda and Sonia, they all said goodbye to us with baying and occasional licking and a few tears, too. This was new. I'd never seen a goat cry, let alone 1,000 of them sobbing at once. I was overcome. I was jittery. I blinked through tears and I tried to organize my mind. Was all this for naught? And would we all simply go back to the park? What would await us there? I thought of the park police and the control the animals people, how they had been pursuing me already, and how much closer they would be paying attention after this failed escape. I stood on the peak of that small mountain as the sun awakened the world and did not know what to do. And then Helene said this: "You could come with us."